Good morning. It's March 1st, 2022, and this is To My Liberal Friends. And this is John Haddo, your host. Tonight we will have the State of the Union by President Joe Biden, and it's a major address given by each president while in office. This will be Joe Biden's first State of the Union. Now, there's always a lot of pomp and ceremony accompanying this address, and I still get a special feeling when the House Sergeant at Arms announces, "Madam Speaker, the President of the United States," and the President enters the House chamber. I don't care if it's a Republican or Democrat, it's a sign of our democracy. And you will see all the cabinet in the chamber with the exception of the one designated to sit out in case of some disaster. You will see members of the Supreme Court in attendance. And of course there will be camera shots of the various leaders of the House and Senate and various members. Some of the things that might have been done with the State of the Union are kind of humorous and at the same time pathetic. Nancy Pelosi has finally said that members are no longer required to wear masks when they are on the floor of the House. She did this because she did not want the American public to be unable to see their faces, and it looked kind of stupid for her and the Vice President to be sitting back there with masks. Although, I'm betting Kamala Harris has a mask on. Pelosi and Schumer have re-erected a fence around the Capitol to remind the people of the January 6th turmoil from last year. There's no real threat, but they felt the symbolism was important for Democrats. Per normal reactions, the Democrats will jump to their feet anytime Biden says something that pleases them, and Republicans will sit on their hands. Now, I admit this was the opposite when a Republican president gives the State of the Union, then Republicans jump to their feet. I'm sure the squad members and other Democratic women in the House will all be decked out in white as they act like suffragettes to show their support for women in any issue that they perceive to be facing women. Now, some of these outfits will cost several thousands of dollars, and I only know this because my wife points it out to me. So you have to wonder how someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez can afford expensive clothes when she said she could not afford an apartment when she first came to D.C. Congressional salary is $174,000, and she's certainly not able to afford them on that amount of money. Not with the rent she pays for that condo down by the Washington Nationals ballpark. But at any rate, she will have expensive clothes on and she will look sublime. Biden will have to start out the State of the Union by talking about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. He will tell the nation that he has imposed hard sanctions on Russia, and he will force them to retreat. He will say this while civilians are dying in Ukraine and Russia is attacking with renewed fury tonight. He will claim his leadership is rallying the world to back Ukraine and its people, but if you want to see a true leader, look to the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, who has stood up to Putin in a way that Biden could never do. Zelensky has stood his ground in the capital of Ukraine while Biden vacationed last weekend in Delaware. He will tell the nation that he has deployed thousands of U.S. troops to Europe, including my grandson, but he will admit that he has already announced that those troops will not engage Russia in any form of combat. So Putin knows this is simply posturing and grandstanding. Biden will then tell all of us that we have to give the sanctions time, and in the end they will work. And while he is saying this, Russia will increase its bombing of Ukrainian cities, causing massive harm and casualties to the civilians in that country. What he should have done was put these sanctions in place weeks ago, not wait until they had already invaded Ukraine. Make the pain before you try to get the gain. Eventually, Biden will have to turn to his domestic agenda. He will tell us that the country is making progress and urge Congress to pass his Build Back Better bill. Democrats will jump to their feet and cheer wildly and clap wildly. Unfortunately, for Joe Biden, Joe Manchin will not be on his feet. He will make a comment about how wages are rising in the country and probably cite some percentage near 5%, but he will admit that real wages are declining because inflation is running at 7 to 9%. He will mention that he is looking for ways to bring down gas prices, but he will not do anything that the hard left feels hurt their climate agenda. He will not allow new drilling on public lands, and he certainly will admit the gas prices are up over 50% from the past year. He will not acknowledge that the price of oil reached an 8-year high this morning at $104 and some cents. He won't mention that he originally shut down the Keystone Pipeline while approving the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that benefited Russia and its energy programs only to have to finally decertify it after the invasion. He won't mention that he has begged the Saudis to pump more oil, only to be told no. He will talk about what he thinks he has accomplished in taming the COVID pandemic, but he won't mention that most of that was due to the vaccine that was developed in a rapid manner under the previous administration. I'm sure you all remember when he said he would not get vaccinated by any vaccine developed under a Trump administration, only to get the shot right after being elected. He won't mention that he has caved to the teachers' unions over and over on mask policy. He certainly won't mention that the angst and protest that parents around the nation have engaged in while trying to get their children back in school for in-class learning. And the single most important thing that will not be said tonight is that the American people are not buying what he is selling. They know that massive government spending is contributing to inflation, and they want it to stop. He won't mention that his approval rating now hovers at around 40% or lower, and the only thing he beats in the approval rating game is that of the Democratic Congress, which is now below 30%. And one last thing, you will not see Nancy Pelosi act like a child and rip up her copy of the speech, but in reality she probably should. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.